Every country on your map started as a wild idea, but some ideas were just certifiably insane. We're not talking about revolutions or grand declarations. We're digging into the history of nations born from sheer spite, teenage bedroom projects, and bureaucratic arguments. These are the true, bizarre stories of forgotten dictators, pirate poets, and the time a goat was legitimately elected president. This is history's lunatic fringe. 1. Let's begin our tour in the dusty desert of Nevada, home to the mighty Republic of Molossia. This isn't just a quirky landmark, it's a full-fledged, albeit tiny dictatorship ruled with an iron fist by His Excellency President Kevin Baugh. For over 4 decades, Molossia has been locked in a bitter, ongoing war with East Germany. The fact that East Germany hasn't existed since 1990 is a minor detail they choose to ignore. The national currency, the Valora, is backed by the value of chocolate chip cookie dough, making its economy deliciously unstable. They even have a space program consisting of launching model rockets. But the most serious law of the land? Onions are considered contraband. Yes, in this desert nation, smuggling a simple onion is a grave threat to national security. 2. Now, imagine a barren, uninhabited rock in the Caribbean, covered in little more than guano. An unlikely spot for a kingdom, you say? Well, welcome to the kingdom of Redonda, a nation whose throne is passed down not by bloodline, but by literary merit. The whole saga began in the 19th century but took a bizarre turn when science fiction writer M.P. Shiel was crowned king. Since then, the title has been a coveted prize among authors, leading to decades of literary wars. Forget armed conflict. These were wars fought with angry letters, competing poetry anthologies, and pure intellectual pettiness. Various writers have claimed the throne, creating rival dynasties all vying for the honor of ruling a kingdom of seagulls on a completely useless rock. 3. What happens when an artist's vision clashes with boring city bureaucracy? In the case of Austrian artist Edwin Lippberger, you declare your house an independent country. Meet the Republic of Kugelmugel, a perfectly spherical home located in Vienna. After a heated dispute with local authorities in the 1970s over building permits for his unusual creation, Lippberger decided the only logical solution was secession. He surrounded his 8-meter sphere with a barbed wire fence, created his own stamps, and declared it a sovereign nation. The Austrian government, failing to see the artistic merit in this, promptly threw him in jail. The sphere was eventually moved to a public park, where it now stands as a permanent, glorious monument to one man's epic battle against paperwork. 4. Most teenagers' bedrooms are a messy kingdom of angst and dirty laundry. But for 14-year-old Robert Ben Madison in Wisconsin, his bedroom in 1979 became the founding territory of the Kingdom of Talossa. What started as a solo project, fueled by adolescent imagination, evolved into an incredibly detailed micronation. Madison didn't just draw a flag. He invented an entire language, Talossan, which now boasts a dictionary with over 28,000 words. As the internet grew, so did Talossa, attracting citizens from all over the world. They developed a complex culture, political parties, and even experienced their own civil war when a faction seceded. It's a testament to what happens when supreme nerdiness meets boundless ambition in a suburban bedroom. 5. If you're going to seize a city and start your own country, at least make it interesting. That was clearly the motto of Gabriele D'Annunzio, an Italian poet, war hero, and all-around madman who founded the Italian Regency of Carnaro in 1920. After occupying the city of Fiume, he established a state that was less a government and more a continuous, drug-fueled art festival. The nation's constitution, a masterpiece of absurdity, declared music to be the foundation of the state. It also legalized divorce and mandated that all citizens receive free musical education. To top it all off, the economy was partially funded by state-sanctioned piracy, and cocaine was freely available for medicinal and spiritual purposes. It was a glorious, chaotic failure. 6. When the New Zealand government decided to redraw regional boundaries, the tiny rural town of Whangamomona found itself on the wrong side of the line. Their response wasn't a petition, it was a declaration of independence. In 1989, they founded the Republic of Whangamomona as a giant middle finger to the bureaucrats. To demonstrate their commitment to alternative politics, their presidential elections have been legendary. Their first president was a goat named Billy, who won by reportedly eating the other candidates' ballots. He served with distinction for 5 years until his death. His successor was a poodle named Ty, who survived an assassination attempt by a rival dog. The town's annual Republic Day celebration now draws thousands, proving that sometimes the most absurd protest can become your greatest asset. 7. Rising from the cold, choppy waters of the North Sea is a relic of World War II, a hulking anti-aircraft platform. To most, it's a decaying piece of history. To the Bates family, it's the Principality of Sealand, the world's most stubborn country. In 1967, former British Army Major Paddy Roy Bates occupied the abandoned sea fort, which sits in international waters, and declared it his sovereign nation. Sealand has a flag, a currency, and a history more dramatic than a blockbuster movie. In 1978, it faced a violent coup led by a German businessman who took Bates's son hostage. In response, Bates launched a helicopter counter-assault, retook the fort, and captured the invaders. This is what happens when a man's home is quite literally his fortress. 8. While mere mortals dream of owning land, some aim for a slightly larger piece of real estate, the entire universe. In 1949, James Thomas Mangan of Illinois walked into his local courthouse and laid claim to all of outer space, founding the nation of celestial space, or Celestia. His reasoning was a strange mix of megalomania and idealism. He wanted to prevent any single earthly nation from claiming celestial bodies for themselves. So, naturally, he claimed it all first. He diligently notified the United Nations, the USA, and the Soviet Union of his ownership and even issued passports to the Apollo astronauts. While Celestia possessed zero actual power, you have to respect the sheer cosmic audacity of one man looking at the stars and saying, "Yep, that's all mine." 9. What if you could found a country with no borders, run by a fugitive guru, that somehow managed to talk its way into the United Nations? Meet the United States of Kailasa, the brainchild of controversial Indian guru Nityananda, who fled India to escape rape allegations. He declared the existence of a borderless Hindu nation for displaced Hindus everywhere, a spiritual concept that suddenly took a very weird, physical turn. Representatives of Kailasa, a country that exists only in theory and on a very elaborate website, somehow managed to attend 2 separate United Nations committee meetings in Geneva. They delivered speeches about the persecution of their leader, leaving actual diplomats utterly baffled and asking each other, "Wait, are these guys for real?" It was a masterclass in faking it until you make it, even on the world's biggest diplomatic stage. 10. Back in the chaos of the California gold rush, the miners of Rough and Ready had a serious problem with the US government: taxes. Specifically, a new tax on all mining profits. Their solution: on April 7, 1850, they voted to secede from the United States and form the independent Republic of Rough and Ready. For 3 glorious months, they were their own nation, free from the tyranny of federal oversight. But then, a crippling realization dawned on them. As a sovereign state, they were no longer allowed to celebrate the 4th of July. The horror. The local saloons also realized they could no longer legally buy alcohol from the USA. Faced with the grim prospect of a summer without patriotic explosions and cheap booze, the citizens quickly held another vote and decided to rejoin the Union, ending one of history's shortest and most thirst-driven rebellions. 11. Sometimes, a nation is born not from war or revolution, but from a really, really long traffic jam. In 1982, the U.S. Border Patrol set up a roadblock on the only highway connecting the Florida Keys to the mainland, searching for drugs and illegal immigrants. This caused massive gridlock, devastating the Keys' tourism-dependent economy. The mayor of Key West, Dennis Wardlow, went to court to stop it, but lost. His response? He went to the front of the crowd, declared the Florida Keys to be the independent Conch Republic, declared war on the United States, symbolically attacked a federal agent with a loaf of stale Cuban bread, and then immediately surrendered 1 minute later to request $1 billion in foreign aid. The roadblock was removed, and the Conch Republic lives on as a hilarious annual festival celebrating their brief, bread-based insurrection. 12. The story of the Kingdom of the Cocos Islands is what happens when you let a 19th-century Scottish sea merchant run his own private fiefdom for 150 years. In 1827, John Clunies Ross settled on the remote Cocos Islands in the Indian Ocean and established a personal kingdom built on coconut plantations. He imported workers from Malaysia, paid them in his own currency, which was only usable in his own company store, of course, and ruled as an absolute monarch. The Clunies-Ross dynasty controlled the islands for 5 generations, a bizarre tropical version of a feudal estate that somehow survived into the 20th century. Eventually, the family's reign ended, not with a bang, but with a sale. In 1978, the current king sold the entire kingdom to Australia for a few $1 million, presumably tired of being the Lord of Coconuts. 13. In the late 1960s, a group of libertarians had a brilliant idea. Why complain about the government when you can just build your own country in the middle of the ocean? This was the dream of Operation Atlantis. Their plan was to build a concrete-hulled ship, sail it out to the Caribbean, anchor it on a seamount, and declare it a new tax-free paradise of freedom. They actually built the ship, a vessel named Freedom, right in a New York river. After years of work, they launched it and began their journey south. Unfortunately, the dream of a libertarian utopia met a harsh, wet reality. Just off the coast of the Bahamas, a hurricane hit, and their concrete ship, the foundation of their entire nation, promptly sank to the bottom of the ocean. The ultimate lesson: gravity and bad weather don't care about your political philosophy. 14. If you build it, they will come. Unless they is the Italian Navy, in which case they'll blow it up. In 1967, Italian engineer Giorgio Rosa spent a fortune building a 400-square-meter platform on steel pylons in the Adriatic Sea, just outside Italian territorial waters. The next year, he declared it the independent Republic of Rose Island. It was designed to be a tourist hotspot with a restaurant, bar, and even a post office. It quickly gained international attention, and Rosa printed his own stamps and declared Esperanto its official language for that extra touch of utopian weirdness. The Italian government, however, saw it not as a quirky tourist destination, but as a tax-dodging scheme. They sent in the military, evacuated the lone caretaker, and then, in a dramatic show of force, used dynamite to blow the entire micronation to smithereens. 15. Having a famous writer for a brother comes with certain pressures. For Lester Hemingway, brother of the legendary Ernest Hemingway, this apparently meant he also needed his own grand, adventurous project. His solution? He built a small bamboo raft, anchored it to an old engine block in the shallow waters off the coast of Jamaica in 1964, and declared it the independent nation of New Atlantis. It was a tiny country, with a population of just 6 people at its peak. He wrote a constitution, designed a flag, and even used the sale of New Atlantis stamps to fund marine research. He was planning to expand his floating nation, but just 2 years after its founding, a massive tropical storm rolled through and completely obliterated the bamboo raft, sending the fledgling nation of New Atlantis to a watery grave. 16. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 is clear. No country can claim sovereignty over Antarctica, but the treaty says nothing about individuals. This is the legal loophole upon which the Grand Duchy of Westarctica was founded. In 2001, a man named Travis McHenry noticed this little oversight and laid claim to a massive, unclaimed slice of Antarctica, an area larger than Mexico. He declared himself the Grand Duke and began a campaign to create a fully fledged nation dedicated to protecting the region's environment. While no government on Earth recognizes his claim, Westarctica has all the trappings of a real country. Fancy, noble titles for its supporters, its own currency, and a very serious-looking website. It's a bold attempt at nation-building in the coldest, most remote place on the planet, all based on a very clever reading of the fine print. 17. Most empires are forged in fire and conquest, spanning vast territories. The Empire of Atlantium, however, was forged in a suburban Sydney apartment by 3 teenagers with a flair for the dramatic. Founded in 1981, this global sovereign state claims its territory as a tiny 61 square meter patch of land in New South Wales, making it arguably the least intimidating empire in history. Its self-proclaimed emperor, George II, promotes a progressive, globalist agenda, advocating for things like unrestricted freedom of movement and decimal time. While its physical presence is smaller than your average studio apartment, Atlantium has attracted thousands of citizens online from over 100 countries. It's a grand imperial project for the internet age, proving that you don't need armies or colonies to have an empire, just a good internet connection and a very, very small piece of land. 18. What do you do when you no longer recognize the authority of the government in your own country? If you're part of the Yidindji people, an indigenous Australian group, you simply declare that the government no longer has authority over you. In 2014, the sovereign Yidindji government formally seceded from Australia. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture. Their members renounced their Australian citizenship, handed back their passports and driver's licenses, and started issuing their own. One of their leaders was even arrested for using his self-issued Yidindji license plates, leading to a legal showdown. They argue that the British Crown never had the right to claim their ancestral lands, so they're just taking them back. It's a bold and fascinating act of modern-day decolonization, one traffic stop at a time. 19. For most people, being denied a bank loan is a frustrating setback. For the family of the Principality of Snake Hill, it was a catalyst for nation-building. After a dispute with their bank, this Australian family decided the financial system was so broken, the only logical solution was to create their own country on their own property. They declared their land the Principality of Snake Hill, complete with a self-proclaimed Royal Highness Princess Paula. While it started as a deeply personal protest, they've embraced the role with gusto. They've issued their own currency, have a collection of antique military vehicles that they call their army, and even have their own ancient coins. It's the ultimate example of taking your financial frustrations and channeling them into something profoundly weird and sovereign. 20. Sometimes, the best way to become a country is through a complete accident. Meet the Republic of Cospaia, a tiny village in Italy that became an independent nation for nearly 400 years due to a surveyor's mistake. In 1440, when the Papal States and the Republic of Florence were drawing up a border treaty, they both forgot to include a small strip of land where Cospaia was located. Realizing they belonged to no one, the residents just shrugged and declared themselves an independent republic. Cospaia became a bizarre, lawless haven, the only place in Italy where tobacco could be grown without taxes, turning it into an early hub for smugglers. It happily existed as a tiny, accidental libertarian paradise until 1826, when it finally, peacefully, divided its territory between its 2 powerful neighbors. 21. In the 1950s, an Israeli free spirit and former sailor named Eli Avivi set up camp in the ruins of an abandoned Arab village on the coast of Israel. When the government tried to demolish what was left of it in 1971, he did what any reasonable person would do. He declared the area the independent nation of Oxland. What followed was a bizarre legal battle where Avivi actually sued the Israeli government and won. The court granted him a 99-year lease on the land, effectively recognizing his quirky micronation. For decades, Oxland was a famous counterculture destination, a tiny hippie enclave with its own flag, a president for life in Avivi, and a passport stamp that confused many a border guard. It was a country born from squatting, and it outlasted all expectations. 22. A dispute over wheat quotas seems like the most boring reason to start a country. But for Leonard Casley, a farmer in Western Australia, it was an act of war. In 1970, faced with crippling government restrictions on how much wheat he could sell, he declared his 75-square-kilometer farm an independent nation, the Principality of Hutt River. And he was dead serious about it. He styled himself Prince Leonard, found an obscure legal precedent he claimed made his secession legal, and for 50 years, his family ran the farm as a sovereign state. They issued their own passports, currency, and stamps, becoming Australia's most famous micronation and a quirky tourist attraction. The Australian government never recognized them, leading to a half-century-long standoff that only ended in 2020 when the Principality was dissolved due to financial pressures, partly from a massive tax bill owed to Australia. 23. The charming Italian town of Seborga looks like any other picturesque village on the Ligurian coast, but according to its residents, it's not part of Italy at all. They claim that due to a series of historical oversights, Seborga was never formally included in the unification of Italy in the 19th century, making it a sovereign principality. This idea, revived in the 1960s by a local flower grower, has been enthusiastically embraced. The town elects its own prince, has its own flag, mints its own currency, the Luigino, and even has its own volunteer army that looks more like a historical reenactment group. While the Italian government completely ignores their claims and happily collects taxes, the residents of Seborga carry on, living in their own little historical bubble, a country in spirit, if not in law. 24. Welcome to the Republic of Occupies, a country inside a city. This bohemian and artistic neighborhood in Vilnius, Lithuania, declared itself an independent republic on April Fool's Day in 1997. What started as a joke quickly became a cherished local institution. Occupies has its own president, a bishop, an army of about 12 people and 4 official dogs. But its greatest creation is its constitution, a beautiful and absurd document displayed publicly in over 20 languages. Its articles include gems like, everyone has the right to be happy, everyone has the right to be unhappy, a dog has the right to be a dog, and the very profound, everyone has the right to misunderstand. It's a country dedicated to art, humor, and the fundamental right to be a little bit weird. 25. In the heart of Copenhagen, Denmark, lies a neighborhood that doesn't quite play by the rules. This is Freetown Christiania, a former military barracks that was taken over by squatters and hippies in 1971 and declared an autonomous Freetown. For over 50 years, it has existed in a strange legal gray area, a self-governing commune of about 1,000 people living by their own set of rules. Christiania is famous for its vibrant art scene, unique, self-built houses, and, most notoriously, its open cannabis trade on the infamous Pusher Street. While Danish authorities have had a long and complicated relationship with the commune, ranging from tolerance to crackdowns, Christiania has endured. It's a living, breathing social experiment, a stubborn pocket of 1970s counterculture that refuses to fade away right in the middle of a modern European capital. 26. What happens when 2 global superpowers can't agree on a map? You get the Republic of Indian Stream. This territory, nestled between New Hampshire in the USA and Quebec in Canada, was caught in a border dispute after the American Revolution. Neither country could definitively claim it, so the 300 or so residents, tired of the ambiguity, just decided to form their own country in 1832. They wrote a detailed constitution, established their own government, and ran their affairs as a fully independent republic. For 3 years, Indian Stream existed in this geopolitical limbo, a tiny, self-reliant nation of rugged frontiersmen. Eventually, the political drama got too intense, with officials from both sides trying to assert authority. In the end, the New Hampshire militia marched in and annexed the republic, ending one of North America's most obscure and fascinating experiments in self-governance. 27. Here's a classic libertarian dream. Find some unclaimed land, build a new society based on pure freedom and no taxes, and live happily ever after. This was the goal of the Republic of Minerva. In 1972, a wealthy American activist named Michael Oliver decided to create his own country by dredging sand onto the Minerva Reefs, located in the Pacific Ocean south of Fiji. He actually managed to build a small artificial island, raised a flag, and declared the birth of a new nation. However, he made one crucial miscalculation. His nearest neighbor, the Kingdom of Tonga, was not amused. Seeing this as a direct challenge to their regional sovereignty, the King of Tonga sent in a small military force, claimed the reefs for himself, and unceremoniously tore down the Minerva flag. The libertarian paradise lasted just a few months before being conquered by a real country. 28. The year is 1980, and the Pacific island of Espiritu Santo is on the verge of becoming part of the new independent nation of Vanuatu. But not everyone is happy about it. A local movement, backed by some shady American business interests who wanted to create a tax haven, decided to launch their own country instead. They declared the independent Republic of Weimaraner, led by a charismatic local leader named Jimmy Stevens. This secession attempt wasn't just a declaration. It led to an armed uprising known as the Coconut War. The rebels, armed mostly with bows, arrows, and clubs, took control of the island. The conflict was eventually put down by forces from Papua New Guinea, but not before it became one of the strangest post-colonial conflicts in history, a bizarre clash over independence, land rights, and the dream of a libertarian paradise. 29. Some countries are born from centuries of history. The state of Molossia was born and died in about a week. After World War I, a group of Serbian veterans laid claim to a small, uninhabited island in the middle of the Danube River, which was disputed territory between Hungary and the newly formed Yugoslavia. In 1920, they founded their state, named Malaria, presumably as a dark joke about the island's mosquito-infested conditions. They elected a president and hoped to be recognized as a legitimate nation. However, their timing was terrible. Just a few days after their declaration, the island was officially awarded to Hungary. The Hungarian police were promptly dispatched, and the Serbian veterans were evicted without a fight, bringing the very short and very swampy history of Malaria to an unceremonious end. 30. The end of World War I redrew the map of Europe, leaving many communities on the wrong side of a new border. The small, predominantly German-speaking town of Schwenten found itself suddenly part of Poland. Unhappy with this arrangement, in 1919 they declared themselves the Free State of Schwenten, an independent nation with one simple goal: to stall for time until they could rejoin Germany. For 6 months, this tiny town operated as its own country, a little island of German identity in a new Polish state. They weren't trying to build a lasting nation. They were just running a very elaborate 6-month-long protest. Ultimately, their efforts were in vain. The Allied powers confirmed the new border, and the Free State of Schwenten was peacefully reintegrated into Poland, its brief and defiant existence becoming a forgotten footnote of post-war chaos. 31. In the chaotic aftermath of World War I, with empires collapsing and armies marching back and forth, the Lithuanian village of Perloja decided to take matters into its own hands. To protect themselves from bandits, rogue soldiers, and the general anarchy of the time, the villagers founded the Republic of Perloja in 1918. This was no joke. They established their own functioning government, a courthouse, a jail, and even raised an army of 300 men. For several years, this tiny village state managed its own affairs, a beacon of order in a sea of chaos. They printed their own money and fiercely defended their small territory. The Republic of Perloja is a powerful testament to grassroots self-determination, a story of ordinary people building their own state not for glory or ideology, but simply to survive. 32. Here's a country that is both one of the oldest and weirdest sovereign entities in the world, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. This is a Catholic religious order that dates back to the Crusades. The truly bizarre part? It is recognized under international law as a sovereign nation, despite having almost no land. Its entire territory consists of just 2 buildings in Rome that have been granted extraterritorial status. Yet, the order issues its own passports, prints its own stamps, has diplomatic relations with over 100 countries, and holds permanent observer status at the United Nations. It is a country without a country, a historical anomaly that has somehow survived for centuries, proving that in the world of international politics, Sometimes all you need to be a nation is a long history and some very well-connected friends. 33. And finally, we have a story where ambition, environmentalism, and sheer stupidity collide. In the 1970s, a Florida man named Richard Sowa had a dream: to build his own private island and declare it a new country. His chosen building material? Millions of old car tires. He painstakingly bundled them together in nets to create a floating base for his island nation, which he planned to call the United States of Isla. Unfortunately, his engineering skills didn't quite match his vision. His grand project, meant to be an eco-friendly paradise, ended in disaster when a storm ripped the structure apart, scattering hundreds of thousands of tires across the ocean floor. The island never materialized, but it did create a lasting legacy, a massive, man-made environmental hazard that continues to pollute the seabed to this day. That was our tour through sovereign madness. But history is littered with ambitious weirdos brandishing flags, and we've only scratched the surface. We know for a fact we missed some incredible stories of failed states and backyard kingdoms. So the challenge is this: hit the comments and name the one self-proclaimed nation you're genuinely shocked we didn't include. If you enjoy diving into this kind of historical insanity, prove it by hitting like and subscribing for more.